I would like to briefly introduce Lorenzo. His full profile is in the detailed agenda that was sent to you this morning. Christy will also put the agenda in the chat for anyone who did not receive it in their mailboxes this morning. So Lorenzo Hodges is a business leader and innovation strategist with over 20 years expertise in designing and delivering solutions to customers across diverse industries. As an experienced designer, he specializes in human-centered design and leverages those insights to develop business strategy, which has a transformative impact on key stakeholders. He's the founder of Plain White Table, Inc., an innovation strategy firm, helping companies to systemize corporate innovation and to design new product, service, and delightful experiences for customers. He is a former director and CEO of Ferrera Optical Limited, and under his tenure, the company received the TTMA Supplier of Services Award. Today, Lorenzo is chairperson of the NOVA Committee at the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, where he leads a team focusing on supporting the development of small and medium and micro enterprises. So Lorenzo, it is an absolute pleasure to invite you now to take the virtual podium, because we're excited to hear from you today.
Thank you, Kamla, and good morning to everyone that's on. This has been an interesting time for me. I would not have been able to join on Sunday, but I was fortunate to participate in a few of the sessions yesterday. Really enjoyed the opening presentation by Francis Bain Kamabach yesterday morning, and I was able to get in a couple of the panels in the afternoon, the last one being just dealing with this VUCA world that we are in. And so for me, it was a rich learning experience, just hearing perspectives from others. It's important to be in an open state and always learning from others, because in innovation practice, one of the things that we say all the time is that you don't know what you don't know. We sometimes know some things that we don't know, and so we could find experts that could help us with the things that we are aware we don't know. But in many cases, there's so much more that we are really just clueless about. And so being open is a core internal attitude and an attitudinal imperative that I think all leaders must adopt. So thank you for having me. I am going to be sharing more conversational style today, just to stay with the general pattern. I'm used to doing presentations and so on. And so today I will talk through some considerations that I think are important for us in the context of building the future and the circular world, both of which I think are essential considerations and both fascinate me. So let me just get my notes handy here as I talk through some of the things and share some perspective. Hopefully I could stick to time and everything will flow properly, after which we could have some questions and answers and interaction as we go along. So thanks again, and let's go. So the topic I want to share with you essentially, and the title of what I'm going to share is Design the Future. All right, so that's the theme that we'll talk about here. What would it take to design the future? And I got that name, I took it from a project, a pilot project that we implemented in 2008, we being Plain White Table. Plain White Table is an organization I founded years ago. It's an innovation strategy company, and we focus on supporting other companies to innovate sustainably by delivering rich value to whoever their customers are in whatever the context is. And so in 2018, I started a pilot project where we brought in some interns, 4 interns. They were all innovation students. engineering student, sorry, from the University of the West Indies. And the idea was, if we are to design the future, then it's important that the people of the future be a part of it, meaning that the young people be a part of the process. They are learning engineering, and which are critical skills for what they will do in their jobs. What they didn't have and what they weren't trained to do was to do design. And so they brought technical skill, but they didn't have the nuance and essence of what a designer would bring to how solutions could be created and put out into the world. And in that project, we interfaced with different industries and they learned different skills. So I'll come back to that at the end to share more of that story, because I do want to focus on the importance of design and why you as representatives or directors of a board need to start thinking like designers and start considering the significance of design for the future of your own organization, and of course, by extension, the planet. So, design. The world, as I see it, really is circular by design. We could find inspiration in nature if we simply look around. Organic things are born or created, then they eventually decay and die. The waste from these things then feed back into the soil, making it even more fertile to facilitate more growth and more birth and more life over time. So there's a cycle that takes place right around us in nature. The very food chain of life allows animals to eat or to eat other animals, which feed on other animals that actually eat grass and eat vegetation and so on. And so there's a way in which the entire ecosystem is connected to allow life to flow. And one thing feeds another, which feeds another, which feeds another. If it's not an animal being fed by an animal, it's an animal being fed by the earth. And when animals die, they feed the earth. And so there's a continuous, beautiful cycle that takes place. Right here in Trinidad, we see every year, and just recently, the beauty of our pui trees. That every year, the pui blooms. And if you're like me, or like my wife in particular, you look forward to that season of time where the pui blooms around the Queen's Park Savannah. And you see these beautiful flowers, but then comes a time when those flowers, the leaves fall off the trees, the flowers fall off and fall to the ground and die. And then they fertilize the very ground that nourishes the very tree that it came from. We see the same thing with fruits on trees, that whatever fruits aren't eaten by humans or by animals, they fall to the ground, and those seeds, the seeds and those trees then fertilize the ground again. I'm describing here a whole ecosystem that works together harmoniously, producing cycles of life, and is very regenerative by nature. And I consider all of that, in my view, to be divine design. Divine design, design that came from a higher order, even beyond the limitations of our humanity. There's a pattern that was divinely established about how design is to take place and how design needs to flow. And so if it is in fact design, I prefer that we could take principles from it and we could recognize the importance of something as simple as design for putting things together in a way that it works best for the earth and for humanity, bearing in mind having people at the center of it all, that our very existence will flourish if we design well. So let's talk about design in the context of business. What is design really? Well, by design here, I'm not referring to graphic design or artistic works, because that's what often people think about when they hear the word design. They think, yeah, well, I'm not creative, I can't paint. I'm not creative, I don't do arts and crafts, and you immediately gravitate to, could immediately gravitate to thoughts like that. But that's not the kind of design I'm referring to. I'm referring to the growing practice of design, which in itself is a discipline. Design is about solving problems elegantly. That's the way I generally describe it. Designers use empathy to derive insights. So They look for understanding in things that are observable, asking questions, going into spaces and observing things. From that empathic process, they then come up with different insights. And from those insights, they then start creating better futures, better products, better services, better experiences, and overall more impactful solutions. And so having design as a part of your business and as part of your business culture and practice and skill set becomes something necessary. Let's talk more about that, how design is important to business performance, because you may be asking, well, what does it have to do with business performance? Because is it just a cool thing? In 2018, McKinsey published their report, which is the Business Value of Design report. And they tracked the design practices of 300 publicly listed companies over a 5-year period in multiple countries and industries. And they found some very fascinating insights coming out of it. Companies with the top quartile McKinsey Design Index, which is what they call it and how they measure things. Companies in the top quartile scores outperformed industry benchmark growth by as much as 2 to 1. As much as 2 to 1. That's outstripping your competition. All right. They also found that those with the higher scores correlated with higher revenue growth, and for the top quartile, higher returns to shareholders. And I know for those of you who are on boards, having returns to your shareholders is a significant thing that you do not take lightly. Higher McKinsey Design Index scores correlated with higher revenue growth, and for the top quartile, higher returns to shareholders. The financial outperformance of top quartile companies holds true across the 3 industries that they would have studied. And so the data is there showing you empirical evidence that tells the story that companies that are design-led, all right, and by design-led meaning on the leadership team of those companies, there are designers, people who have training in design, backgrounds and skills in design that understand how to elegantly solve problems and bring that finesse into the business context. We see examples of the Apples and the Amazons and so on, all of whom have designers. Your Airbnb, the founder of Airbnb, which you may know as a business that facilitates stays in different people's homes. He is a designer by training, and of course would have formed Airbnb starting with a simple observation of a need that people had around a festival. And so he parlayed that and used that skill to say, hey, if this is what the need is, given how much I understand the nature of the need that people have, I will design a solution that perfectly meets that need. And now Airbnb is one of the highest valued businesses in the world as it pertains to hotel and accommodation and that particular industry. And so there were four things that they identified that were useful and meaningful in the context of design for business. The leadership was analytical, right? And so they were able to measure and drive design performance with the same rigor that they would drive revenue performance and cost management. So being analytical about how they go about designing things. They had cross-functional talent. And as you hear this, think about your organization and how your teams are structured, how your board is structured, how your executive team is structured, and then ultimately what range and scope of skills are present within your organization and the organization you represent. So it's cross-functional talent. They make user-centric design everyone's responsibility, not a siloed function. What is user-centered design or user-centric design? User-centric design puts people at the focus. So if we think about productivity and process automation, you start with how do we make people's lives better? How do we make our staff function better so they have a smooth flow so they could do more with less? if you think about the customer as the person or the customers as the people in focus, how do we make this experience more delightful for our customers? And as you think about that, think about the function of design in your organization. Do you have skill sets of people who focus on design elements, or are we delivering services really just from a functional standpoint? And so they're saying this thing is almost cultural. It should not just live in silos. You want that skill to be across the board. Thirdly, it's continuous iteration. So you want to de-risk development. So de-risk as in reduce the risks associated with the development by continually listening, testing, and iterating with end users. What does that mean? It means that over time, you want to build a culture of experimentation. You want to be testing things. And in the context of the circular economy, circular design requires that you be testing different things, that you could start small, start with a pilot project and evaluate so you can learn from it. You can test it at a small scale and improve. As you learn, you improve. And so there's a saying that we have in innovation and in design practice, which is you prototype to learn. So you create a small prototype, not to get the results of the revenue. You create the small prototype with the priority and focus on learning from what we build, so that as we learn, we can iterate and improve until we choose the right go-to-market strategy, the thing that will actually take to the market that will earn us the revenues and returns. Or it may be for a process in-house that, like Carib, which would have been described in the presentation by Francis Bain Kamabach yesterday, that they would have optimized their process, looking at how the bottles could be recycled, how they could save on water. They looked at how they optimize the overall process to reduce cost and reduce waste in the process. And then fourthly, it's user experience. Break down the internal walls between physical, digital, and service design. Okay, so physical might be your brick and mortar structures of your organization, your digital being where you use social media, websites, mobile apps, and so on, as well as the walls for service design. Who is responsible for designing the flow around the services that you deliver? And that would be internal flows, so how teams function and serve, how HR serves the rest of the organization, how accounts and finance serves the rest of the organization. What is the service design around that? Because you are serving other parts of the organization. So service design is not only for the customer or external customer facing service. You want to be thinking about all users, all of the humans that are part of the process. And so you're looking again at analytical leadership, cross-functional talent, continuous iteration, and of course, a focus on the user experience. So here are some 8 considerations for boards of directors that I think are important in this light, because you have to begin to shift or consider how to shift your orientation towards incorporating design as a fundamental and normal and ordinary part of your business operations and your dialogue and conversation. So the first, rethink the relationship between risk management and innovation. Oftentimes, it is seen as though those two things are oppositional forces, right? But the truth is that you can, in fact, be so risk averse and so strong in managing risk that you miss one of the most fundamental risks facing businesses today in a VUCA world, which is your business may not be relevant in the future because the context around us, which is uncertain, which is volatile, which is changing, can find your organization irrelevant because you have not morphed. And so one of your biggest points of failure and risk that you may be facing is the risk of not being relevant to your evolving customer base over time. The risk of not being relevant to the evolving economy of the world, which is growing more digital. And so if you are not thinking digital, you could fall behind and your company could be outstripped by competition, and you may find yourself like stories like Blockbuster that was outstripped by Netflix, like Kodak, and everyone may be aware of some of these stories, these businesses that were once thriving and on a path of success. In fact, oftentimes what you find is the moment when you are being disrupted is the time when your business numbers and all of the metrics that we traditionally track may be trending upward. And so that having a different perspective of the nature of risk, you have to capture the risk associated with not innovating as compared to the risk associated with innovating, which many think about, oh my gosh, might be too risky if we try this new thing. Well, here's what. What if you don't try this new thing? Will you be here in 10 years? Will your organization be here in 10 years? And so as the world shifts and regulations kick into place, enforcing appropriate circular economy practices, will your organization be configured in a way that you would have already put things in place, that your risk tolerance would have shifted from avoid innovation or avoid things that seem too new towards embracing things that seem too new and finding the balance to allow you to encourage innovation and balance that with appropriate risk management. So rethink that relationship, redesign your business model. Think about how in your business model today, and there are different tools out there. Some of you may or may not have heard of the business model canvas. The business model canvas has been adapted for the circular economy. And so for each part of the business, your business model, you could rethink how you capture, create, and deliver value to your customers by including concerns around the circular economy, right? Are we delivering value in a way that would bring good returns back in? Are we connecting the dots between the product that we sell to the customer and where that product goes thereafter? Do we understand how our customers are using those products, and can we in fact secure the post-life of those products, meaning what happens after that product is used and consumed by or is now dysfunctional? Are we designing the capacity to repair our products so we then have a revenue stream associated with it, and all of that is designed into our business model? Do we have partners that could join us downstream from after our customers are finished with our products to take that thing that today would be waste and convert it into something of further value for further use beyond? And so you have to be now designing business models that cater to a new set of partners, new supply chain relationships that allow you to connect the dots. You want to also diversify your teams and the perspectives. So yesterday I was intrigued. Someone on the chat would have made the comment about the age of people on, I think it was Derek Lockpat, who should be on one of our panels a bit later today. I think he raised the question about the age of people on boards. And that's a question that I've, as a young man, of course, it's a question that I've had about boards for a long time, because there's an image of what board members look like. And nothing is wrong with the boards that we've had, but the question is, can we optimize the complement of representation that exists on boards today? So bringing design into that, which is my next point, bring design into leadership. Can you have a CEO that has a design mind? When you are recruiting for your CEO, are you looking for someone that, apart from the other skills related to your industry, asking for design skills becomes a useful thing? And even looking at your executive or management team and considering, do we have a team that has design positioned in there with the right perspectives to help us so that natively embedded into the teams and the functioning of the teams in the organization will be that design perspective. Okay. I also mentioned, and just connecting to my first point, which is point number 5, embrace risk whilst learning to mitigate against it. All right, so embrace it, but mitigate against it. So we're not saying, look, just throw caution to the wind. You definitely want that correct balance. You want to encourage experimentation, which is point number 6. Encourage experimentation, and there's a safe way to do that. All right, you want to come up with hypotheses. So on one of our teams, we asked, how might we serve our customers in the context of COVID-19? How might we serve our customers in the context where they cannot leave home? Are we able to deliver value to our customers in that way? In your context, you may be thinking in a circular world, how might we improve the production of this product or a certain segment of your product portfolio through greener practices? You may not have to do greener practices for everything, but try. Let's do a small run for a smaller segment to see how that works, which connects with my next point. You want to start small and iterate, right? Start small and iterate so you can learn over time. And the idea is, as you do, the more you do, the better you become at doing. The more you design, the better you become at designing, the more you learn, and the better capable you become as an organization to create value for the future. And my last point here under considerations for boards would be that you want to encourage digital, right? Use digital. Digital is one of those things that digital technology and digital transformation is one of those things that saves a lot of resources from being used. So yesterday I was really interested again in the last panel because a couple of the members, a couple of the corporate secretaries that were represented on the panel spoke about digitizing the way in which they share information and manage things in the context of their board. And some of that was triggered by the remote work context of the pandemic, but they have since maintained using digital in some cases for meetings, but also for how do you store files. If you are still today, every time you have a board meeting, printing all of the meeting minutes and the report from the management team and so on, if you are still printing all of those things and you have a board of 10 people, so you have to print how many ever documents every time and however often you meet, then it means you're not helping the wider circular economy conversation. You are in fact working against it because you're dealing with, as simple as it is, the paper, the packaging that goes into the paper that has to be disposed, the transport that it took to get your paper to you, and all of the emissions related to getting that paper, as simple as it is. And that's just the paper. Introduce similar things around the ink and the printers and the servicing of the printers and all of the associated things. A good circular design practice is redesign the model for how we interface from one team, individual to individual, or person to person, or business to customer. Digital technology allows you to actually streamline that. Again, allowing you to become more and more circular. So just and I'm watching the time here, I have a number of questions that would pertain to boards that I think are useful for you to consider. Let me just check in before I continue with Kamla, because there are two things that I do want to share, but I am tracking the time and I don't want to go much further. So Kamla,
Lorenzo,
how do you feel?
Doing so well. I am so enjoying this presentation, and I'm sure so many other people. We do have a half-hour slack between the end of this and our first panel. It just means people wouldn't have lunch.
Oh
or they
my.
can have lunch by their computers. But for sure, no, I am really open to you going a bit over time. We could continue the conversation even until it's time for us to start our first panel, which would be at 1 p.m. So
okay, all right, well then I would make the next 2 points as brief as I can, because what I want to leave you with is certainly a list of questions that as members of a board you should be thinking about and having dialogue about. Okay, so first thing would be just the circular design. You want to get familiar with the circular design and what it is. There's a wonderful guide online, and if you go to the name, it's literal, the circulardesignguide.com. Let me type that in the chat here. Because not everyone would be, it didn't come up as a link, I'm not sure why, but hopefully I didn't misspell anything. Looks spelled okay, yeah, right. And so there are resources that you can use. And of course, beyond what you could get online, there are people that could help you. And in some cases, you may need to get some help to run different workshops and so on. And a lot of design starts with simple projects. And I'll give you an example of one that I was fortunate and blessed to work on some years ago with some students at UE. This is a different project. This was not the internship I spoke about. They were developing a smart garbage bin. In fact, a smart recycle bin. What happens at recycle bins today? At recycle bins today, you have the bin, and then people come and they bring bags and they dump them into the bins. They aren't always sorted. And so these students thought, which I applauded them for, let's use technology to discern what the thing is. And so they were developing sensors that would go on these smart bins that once you throw the raw material into the bin, the sensors would detect if it's a bottle, if it's plastic, if it's glass, different things, and then sort it. So it will filter the bin at that point. And then they had technology built in, again, sensor technology, that would let those who manage the bins send an alert to let them know this bin is 80% full, and based on trends, it will be full within the next 2 hours, or it will be full within the next 3 days. So whoever collects the plastics or the bottles, etc., could manage the logistics and never have bins that are overflowing. And I've unfortunately, I've seen bins that are overflowing and it gets unsightly. My wife and I, for the last decade, at home, we've been practicing good eco-friendly practices within our home. So we collect all of our plastics and have been sorted them for a long time. Back to the project. So they started designing this, and they are engineers. They're trained to design in some regard because the engineers inherently understand process and good problem solvers. They're very, very good problem solvers. Get an engineer on your team, not a bad idea. Ignore which engineering they did. The skills that they have are transferable in any industry. That's just my plug. I'm not an engineer by trade. But nevertheless, one of the things they didn't have was an understanding of design thinking and how to go about prototyping their solution. So the way they went is they designed this bin on Sketch. They started writing the software, and then they requested quotes to do metal fabrication. And they were on the verge of ordering, based on their sketches, metal fabrication for the bin. I entered into the picture as an advisor to support this particular team at the University of the West Indies. And I said, guys, you're moving a bit fast because process is important. And this is where a designer comes in. And the whole thing that I mentioned about design to learn and start small and start with prototypes. I said, guys, you're going too fast. Start with cardboard. Build a mock-up version in cardboard first, because by the time you invest your money in the final thing, you've gone beyond the point of no return. If it fails, it's costly to correct. And so I want you, as I share the story, to be thinking about the method and the kind of conversations you need to have when your innovation teams are doing new things. That you could say as a board or ask your CEO, okay, have you prototyped this? Do you have a version of this? Have you tested this small? And so here are things that they missed in their initial design that was going to be fabricated. They didn't have a place to put in their chip system in their design. They had no way to open it and close it back for maintenance purposes. So they would have had significant rework afterwards. They also discovered that the bin needed to lock. So they had no locking mechanism in mind. They just had a receptacle at the top in their design for dropping things in, but there was no way to take things out. And so through the cardboard mock-up, they quickly saw the evident flaws in their initial design and were able to modify it. And when they got all of the simple issues out, meaning, yeah, this thing could function as cardboard, we've learned what we needed to. They tested it with their putting in their smart components, dropping stuff in and everything. They were then able to go towards fabrication. Now that's a small scale project. In your organization, you may be dealing with bigger projects as you embark upon circular design projects and circular economy related projects. So you want to start again with that kind of thinking. Let's design, let's test. Start with something small, see how it learns, see how it works, iterate until we have a model that we have a high level of confidence at, because we are de-risking our projects by using a design approach and a design mind. Let's de-risk it by designing better so that by the time we go to development and production, we increase the chance of success. So really good that they were thinking about the environment and designing for it. And I'm using the term design loosely now, but there are levels of skill in design that could be acquired. So let me close with a list of questions here. So let me call out some of the questions for your engagement as a board. Question 1, are we devoting enough time to innovation in our board meetings? Because the thing is, if you are averse to innovation, the transformation to go circular economy is fundamentally about innovation, right? And so if you are averse to it, then circular economy becomes a bit obscure. So you want to build a culture around innovation, which means anything that is new, the capacity of your company to evolve from season to season. Today it's circular economy. A few years ago, the talk was digital transformation. Before that, it was something else. I guarantee you, in a few years, there'll be something else. What you want is to build an environment that is culturally oriented to change and innovation, okay? So that's the first question. Secondly, what is our risk appetite? Is it aligned with that of management? And what measure do our leadership and culture send to the rest of the organization about risk and innovation, right? So what message, do our leadership and culture send to the rest of the organization about risk and innovation? Are we telling everyone in the organization by decisions made in the board, don't try new things? Are we discouraging people from discovering the future of our organization? In fact, even better yet, are we discouraging people from designing the future of our organization and by extension of our planet? Have we agreed on metrics to evaluate innovation and circular design efforts, right? Are we tracking that? Is that part of the conversation that we're measuring? And I liked that yesterday, Ansa McCall and the story told, they are measuring in very deliberate ways at their circular economy practice. And in fact, they've tied it into incentives for their executives. What is our response when an innovation initiative or circular design initiative fails? Are we encouraging or discouraging management to experiment? Do we shut everything down and say, no, never again? Big stick, licks, cocktail, fire everybody? Or do we have a practice around experimentation that leads to learning? And I would add safe experimentation that leads to learning, which builds the habit of discovery and trying new things. And let me just start one more in the interest of time. Related to your team, do you have a team or representation on your board or in your executive team that understands design? Right? And do you have conversations around that? Do you have conversations about the innovation management practice for the organization? Or do we just get to, okay, how did we perform this month? How did we perform last quarter? And of course, different boards meet at different cycles, right? What are the things that you're tracking performance-wise and engaging your CEO on, right? You want that to be on the CEO's agenda or whoever the leader's agenda is. And certainly that starts by the board having it on its own agenda. I will stop there with my list of questions. I have more, but I do want to have room for questions from you and a two-way interaction. So thank you all for your time. Design the future is not just a cool suggestion. It really is an imperative. The future favors those who design it and are prepared for it. If we don't design it, someone else will.
Excellent, Lorenzo. This was such an excellent presentation. Thank you so very much. I've just been glued to all that you have shared from beginning to now. And a lot of it for me was extremely clear. I think a person should have some very good takeaways. But Lorenzo, so I'm asking everyone, if persons have questions, you may put it in the chat, or if you want to raise your hands, because we're going to keep Lorenzo here for a few more minutes to be able to get some engagement with him. Lorenzo, I have a question for you. It's a tough one. So I'm preparing you.
My knees are shaking.
Yeah, so I'm totally sold on the concept of design thinking and the idea that you need to be user-centric in how you innovate and develop. Here's the challenge for persons who are looking to really adopt this. If we are looking at circular economy and we are looking at the future generations, how do you identify that user and the needs of that user who does not yet exist because they're a few generations away? What would you advise?
Oh, I like that question. So it really starts with us understanding who's here today, because future generations will be extensions of those that are around today. Okay. And so if we let's break it down a bit. We start with understanding what are the concerns of people today and what do we need? We already have clear risk factors. So if we think about Trinidad and Tobago alone, the flooding last year was phenomenal, and phenomenal here is not a compliment at all. It was ridiculous. Okay. And so we see the impacts, and in small island developing states, there are already concerns for the future sustainability of our economies, because too much of climatic shocks in years to come could literally drown our nations in the Caribbean. Okay, so we're thinking today with a sense of how do we safeguard the future, which starts with simply understanding the generations that are around today. We already have among us 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. And so I always like to start with in our homes, the very context, our immediate context around us. Even before we get to work and dealing with our companies, it starts with our homes and understanding what's the nature of the future that I want for my child, my niece, my nephew, my students, the young people. It starts by understanding that. The good thing is, from a sustainability standpoint, that the issues will affect everyone. And so if you understand what affects different groups, it's transferable, right? It's transferable to everyone. So a big part of what we have to do now is make decisions that would stop the negative flow, right? That would reverse the effects that we've had in the past. And so it means rethinking today our current supply chain, our current operations, our current structures in our organizations, and seeing, okay, how do we then find a way to have bigger impact? But coming back to your question, the empathy starts with just understanding those that are around us, right? And that these people may not have an island to enjoy 30 years from now the way that we enjoy, right? And in many cases, and it's something that we learn in design, if you ask someone directly what they need, you have to be able to capture it and look for the nuance that they're not saying, because not everyone can describe, okay? So if I ask you, if I think about one of my favorite innovations is the Apple iPad, Apple would not have asked, if they had asked anyone, do you want a big tablet? People would have said no. But Apple understood something around people's behavior. They observed the behavior around the iPhone, the convenience of the touch, the immediacy of the access to the information. They looked at the opposing thing, which is the trappings of opening a laptop and having to power it up and so on. But wait a minute, there's enough of a case that nobody's asking for, but we understand the human dynamics. The iPad today remains the #1 selling tablet because Apple understood things that people couldn't describe, but they observed. So we have to become better human observers, look at the people around us, and then design for needs that they are unable to articulate. Right? Truth be told, no 5-year-old can really tell you today what they need. They're not old enough to articulate what they need out of the earth. They won't have the language for it. And so we have to be empathetic on their behalf.
Yeah. Agreed. No, and we're not even looking at 5-year-olds of today. We're looking at generations 2 and 3 down the road from us. So
yeah, correct. Who are not even here yet.
That's right. So yeah. I totally take what you were saying, that first we need to develop that empathy around persons who are here now. And if we understand our needs, it gets us in that mode of thinking, of understanding that you are responding to a need. And it may be a need that is not yet articulated. And you gave an excellent example of that. So it means we have to push our creativity to that level to be able to project what may be needed 2 and 3 generations from now. And I'm sure it's not going to be easy because, as you have indicated, and I love the sentence that you said, the moment when you are being disrupted is when your business may be trending upwards. So you have to be so open to the change that is happening around you. And the fact that your innovation has to be adaptable, because yesterday it was one thing and tomorrow it's going to be another. So that was
Absolutely.
really brilliant.
Absolutely.
So appreciate that. I see my chairman has put on his video and he is unmuted. That's always my sign that he is ready to also engage in conversation with us. So as we bring him in,
First, I'd like to thank Lorenzo for a really excellent presentation. The whole design thinking and how we change how we do what we do is so very important. Why I put on my my camera was that I don't know if I agree with you, Kamala, about we trying to think for the future generations. Our focus is not about thinking for them. It's about making sure we leave a planet that they can live on. And we will do that by reducing the amount of carbon dioxide equivalents in the atmosphere. And that has to be one of the areas we focus on. How do we reduce the huge number of gigatons of carbon equivalents in the atmosphere? That's where we have to focus. And that is a huge undertaking. And to Lorenzo's point, we need to be very clear about what we are trying to achieve and how we're measuring it to ensure that we are doing everything possible, even small things, because we are a small country, we don't have huge corporations, but each of us doing whatever little we can do, but we have to measure. And then we have to track and make sure that we keep on track and not just paying lip service to the whole idea. So for me, that is critical.
Agreed.
Thank you.
And I like what you said there, Nigel. Incidentally, I enjoy your newsletter, which I receive. So in terms of that customer, so I always think about, for me, I define a customer as anyone you serve. My wife is my customer. I'm not dealing with a commercial transaction, right? So it's anyone that you serve. So that means everyone in every organization has customers that are not necessarily the ones that pay your bills. And so to Nigel's point, we have existing customers. It's the humans on earth today, right? And so understanding the needs of those that are already here is a perfect starting place. Even before we get to the next ones, because the truth is we don't know 50 years from now what human beings are really going to be interested in. It's hard for the brain to really conceive what that world might look like. Will we be in Mars and on the moon? I have no idea, but I like starting where we are and being very practical about, before thinking about those we can't even access, there are humans we could access now, that we could protect, that we could save now. And so if we look at the wider ecosystem, we have a grand opportunity now to redesign our businesses in a way that slows the direction that things are going. In some cases, that completely halts the direction that things are going. And then in some cases, takes it in the next direction, which is regeneration, right? That we could start refueling the earth where it is possible. There are some things we will not be able to. My understanding is we can't increase the amount of water that's on the earth. Some of the science says it's a finite set, and it's not my area of expertise. So there are some things we will not be able to do. So it means we need really excellent water conservation type techniques. And so we should not be fundamentally wasting water in our organizations and by extension in our homes to start with, right? But we have to start where we are now and just building on Nigel's point before we get to those to come, because there'll be none to come if there's no earth for them to live on.
Exactly.
Understood. Accepted. I mean, I will confess I'm challenged sometimes understanding Gen Zs of this generation, but you know, 2 or 3 generations from now.
On the note of Gen Zs, one of the things that suggestion I would make, and building on what we tested in 2018 with our Design the Future internship, July, August is a perfect time to form a millennial panel or a panel of young people that you bring in with a specific focus. And let me tell you what that focus is. Not to do standard internship things like file papers and get rid of the stack of papers that you didn't have, right? Bring them in for their mind. Okay, bring them in for their mind. Have them in focus groups talking about the future of your business. Get to understand some of their concerns. Get to understand their perspective, because some things that you would think are native to them is not. And I'll give you an example. And this is an example. This is now old. And so things have advanced even further. A friend of mine, a colleague of mine at the time, his son he dropped his son by his granddad for the day. His son complained all day because his laptop was not working. When his dad got home, got there to pick him up, the son said, Dad, the laptop is not working. Dad pulls up the laptop is in fact working. He said, it's not working. He pulls up the browser, it's not working, the laptop, and in his mind, it's not working. Why? The dad discovers because there's no internet access by his grandparents. In his mind, a computer is connected to the internet. He's not thinking about a thing called connect to the internet. It is a default state in his mind, right? And I'm just speaking here to the frame of thinking. And so bringing teams like that, 5, 10 of them in, give them something to focus on, a nice juicy challenge in your organization, something that the board may be musing on or your management team may be musing on, and just get their perspective. Let them go into brainstorm sessions and bring ideas. The ideas will be wild, some will be completely irrelevant, but what you will get is a wider generative spectrum of ideas, which is what you want. Good design thinking allows you to have a wide range of ideas. Over time, you will apply critical thinking and narrow those ideas. But too often, we start constrictive. So we start with 2 and 3 ideas, in which case you don't have much room. So bring them in and expand the range of ideas. You will learn from it. We will learn from it, and so on. That's perfect for July, August. Every year, plan that as an exercise in your company and design, come up with challenges that they have just to get their mind and pay them for their mind.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. I think that was a brilliant suggestion. We have lots of leaders in this room who have that ability to be able to bring young people into their organizations as well. So I'm hoping that a lot of them will take up your suggestion. Now, there's a great question in the chat from Aline Makomi, and I would like us to address it. Aline, do you want to unmute and ask your question, or do you want me to read it out for you? I'm just checking quick to see if Aline is unmuted. Yes, go ahead.
Well, you can read it out, but the thing is, even as Lorenzo was speaking just now about the fact that we have to be able to leave, or even Nigel, you know, a world in which they can live, part of that world has to do with, and he spoke to some of it, the diversification at the board level. Bringing in younger persons, having different skill sets, but we have to try to find ways to make those changes even now with what we have. And I know yesterday, the whole issue with the corporate secretaries, they have a real challenge, you know, and sometimes it's not so easy to walk away. So what are some of the things we can do at the board? Because I'm even considering public sector, and possibly where the person's listening now to this, there is so much rich information being shared that can help you to cope, to influence, you know, to make changes, and yet it's gone.
Yes.
It's flying over their head in a sense.
Yes, so I'll connect it to where I started about divine design and looking at lessons from nature. Okay, what grows comes from what is planted, and so you have to be thinking about what are the seeds that you're planting in the board, and so those mindsets starts with someone planting a seed that says innovation and transformation is an imperative for us. For our long-term future. So someone has to start that conversation. And it sounds kind of maybe too simple to be accepted as an answer. But if you don't plant that seed as a starting point and then nurture that seed, okay, so having planted the seed, someone has to ask, okay, how do we now nurture it? And nurturing may be adding water and sunlight for that seed over time to grow and germinate into something. What does that look like in real terms? It may be bringing experts that could share perspective in your board meeting. Someone who could come in and talk for 15 minutes, talk for half an hour, have a webinar dedicated to your board, you know, have other perspectives from staff members or so. It depends, right? But someone who could join, if you can't get it at the level of the composition of your board, because that I accept. That may not be trivial to change. There are reasons why boards are constituted the way they are. People are vetted based on expertise and experience and just different factors and so on. So you may not necessarily be able to switch your board membership simply, but you can have information coming in and being fed in. And so if the board is now consuming the right kind of perspective, it allows room for over time a mindset shift to take place. And I think those are a couple of simple, important steps. You then need a champion in the board that gets it. Right? Someone that gets it. And I really enjoyed that conversation with the corporate secretaries yesterday, because I saw their passion for the organizations they work with. I saw how much they could be and are advocates and becoming more advocates within the context of a board. And so having someone that will put it on the agenda and say, yeah, you know, there's often this item. I served on a board for just over 3 years, certainly at Ferrara Optical. And so there's always that other items block, right? Having that other items block always filled with a conversation around innovation until it's no longer in other items, until it is part of the standard list of items. So you'll migrate from other items to being a standard part of our conversation and something that you measure and track and report on and require your management team to report on over time. But it starts really with something as simple as conversation. So plant the seed and then nurture the seed. If you don't have the resident skills within the board, find someone with the right perspective, training, experience, insight that could then help you to nurture that thing over time.
Thank you. Some very good suggestions. Now we have another excellent question in the chat, and I want to make sure that we address it. It's from Richard Nichols. Richard has joined us from Guyana, and Richard has said, excellent piece, Lorenzo. And so his question is, with the continued emergence of artificial intelligence being developed towards anticipating consumer human needs and algorithm tracking software integrated into social media platforms, what is your take on design thinking generation, where humans will soon be competing with highly intelligent computers for decision making? Artificial intelligence is now sentient.
Yeah, that's a nice juicy question there, Richard. So AI is something that we all have to, as a priority, immediately start learning about. If you're not already, the majority of people on the earth are not AI experts. The majority of software developers are not AI experts. Where AI has come to, there's a lot of learning that has to take place. And so it means that we, in general, have to just little by little get informed about it and understand what are the opportunities. Specific to what you're asking about, design thinking generation, when humans will soon be competing with highly intelligent computers for decision making. No, I'm not sure which angle you're going for. If you're going for competing as in humans will be replaced by, or if you're trying to get a sense of, is there still a relevance for design thinking, given that AI could give the perspective that you need without a design thinking process? So let me speak to the latter, just to cover all bases. Design thinking allows us, and until AI matures, we need humans to train it, okay? AI is dependent on the data it receives and the prompts that it gets. So you have to create different prompts. You have to create different data sets, and the AI learns based on what it is fed over time. And so it will be a while before it replaces certain kinds of decision making, right? And it does help, and it can accelerate some things. But where I think design thinking is needed is design thinking could be used in the context of AI. So you can use design thinking to figure out how do we then plant and embed AI as part of our practice. So they're not necessarily completely oppositional, right? So you can start your process by saying, what are some of the challenges facing boards today, and ask AI. And that gives you one set of information. So in design thinking, you're looking for different sources. One would be, one empathic source is you could do observation and you could see for yourself. There's no AI yet that would be able to observe certain kinds of human behaviors. How long your line is, right? How frustrated the customers are, what views they have. You need humans right now to observe some of that. Next set of data you're looking for is conversations. So the AI may give you a suggested list, but you then want to validate and go have conversations to find out, okay, let me talk to, the challenge I gave AI was, what are issues facing boards? Let me talk to board members and see, are these things aligned? And they'll either be aligned or not. So you still need that human going to curate, get information, and then sit with that information and think it through. AI could help that, the synthesis of the information as well. Again, those tools have to be developed, but you then have to pour that information into AI. So you'll notice I'm switching back and forth between use the AI, use a human, use the AI, use a human, right? So right now, there are some things that you will still do better all the way through, human-wise. Let me give you an example of something that we never got to implement. It's came out of that internship, the Design the Future internship in 2018. I was not working at Ferrara Optical at the time, and we were doing an independent ethnography study. So we do, to learn industries, we would do observations. So we went into multiple eyewear competing companies. We had no favorite or anything like that. We are observing. One of the things we observed is that in the store, people are moving from frames to frames. The standard optical store has frames on a rack. And so we sat to observe, humanly observe, where are people moving within the store? What's the footpath? Which frames are they gravitating towards? Which frames is everyone walking straight by? And then what are the demographic mixes of, is it men, women, kids, adults, etc., right? Who are moving and gravitating to which sections within the store? That's human observation. And that helps and will be very useful at this point because none of the people would have been digitally connected to the store. But one of the ideas the team members, again, young team, working with myself, all of us were young on the team. One of the things that they considered was we could use sensors to track the movements of people. And sensors on the racks with the frames to tell which frames are being tried on and which are not. And so the ideal thing is to find a mix between what could be humanly observed and managed and what could take a load off of the humans and use technology, sensors, which will track the information. That data could be fed into an AI model. The AI model could then propose, reorganize your shelves, change your inventory altogether, have different styles in different sections because the data says such and such. What I'm getting at is that mix for the foreseeable future really is our best, in my opinion. Let me be clear. In my opinion, is our best bet. And I don't see it as a replacement conversation. I see it as an augmentation conversation. How do we use AI and embed it into our design processes so it enhances the results that we get and perhaps accelerates our journey to acquiring those results?